Hurricane Sandy's impact is now reaching past homes and businesses, now disrupting criminal trials in New York City. 2 warehouses where they kept all of the evidence flooded. The NYPD has 20 officers, 6 civilians, and a captain now trying to recover that evidence. All of this is according to the New York Times. The warehouses that flooded contained more than 11,000 barrels of evidence. Steve Banks is the chief lawyer for the Legal Aid Society. Steve, first of all, what was in those barrels?
The barrels included things like DNA evidence, cloth, clothing, guns, drugs. There were cars, all the kinds of things that might be associated with a criminal case.
New York Times reporting that in at least 6 criminal trials, the cops testified that the evidence was, quote, inaccessible. How big of a problem is this potentially?
Well, those 6 cases are just the tip of the iceberg. At the Legal Aid Society alone, annually we handle 300,000 cases, but 213,000 of those cases are criminal cases in all 5 boroughs. So the idea that only 6 cases are affected with 11,000 barrels inaccessible or damaged or lost, I think what the real concern here is that in many cases there'll be grave injustice because the evidence isn't available, and we're very concerned about wrongful convictions resulting from this situation.
You are appealing a case, a Brooklyn man convicted of a crime based on DNA evidence that was destroyed. What happened in that case in particular?
Well, in that particular case, the government was allowed to simply present a report about what the evidence showed and what it was, and the individual was unable to confront the evidence. I mean, fundamental to our criminal justice system is that you're able to challenge how evidence is collected, how it's tested, how it's presented. If we've learned anything about DNA, it has the power to exonerate, but it also has the power to result in wrongful convictions if it's improperly collected. And that's what our concern is in these kinds of cases.
How is this going to change how you proceed in cases where DNA is a critical part of the case?
Well, one of the real serious concerns here is that we may not know in these cases which ones are affected. In New York, it's one of 14 states in the country that have yet to reform their discovery laws. What do I mean by that? In New York, we still have trial by ambush. You don't find out what the evidence is until the actual trial. If you're sued in a consumer case or a contract case, you have the right to discovery, to get a copy of the debt document, to get a copy of the contract. Not so in a criminal case in New York. And so this is a situation which certainly highlights the need for discovery reform in New York. We've asked the police for an accounting of all cases that are affected, and it's incumbent upon them to provide that accounting. If not, we're going to have to go to court. And I hope we don't have to, but we may have to.
And your zeal to make sure that that some rights aren't trampled, is there a chance here that some bad guys are going to get off?
Well, I think this is a concern here where you've got 11,000 barrels of evidence. We're just beginning now to evaluate what the consequences are going to be. I think before we proceed any further, it's important for the police to provide the information about what cases are affected so that everyone, the prosecution and the defense, can assess what's going on in these cases.
Steve Banks, chief lawyer for the Legal Aid Society. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate your time. Keep us posted on all of this, too.
Thanks for having me.
Worst Congress ever?